Okay, so this is one weekly practice that helped us transform our manufacturing business from doing $300,000 a year to $3 million in the span of 2 years. So a lot of growth, really compressed timeline, and I would attribute a lot of it to this one weekly practice. It's what we called the WIG and MIG meeting. The WIG and MIG meeting. So this comes, it's kind of a bastardization of a number of different theories and systems. One from the book Traction, one from the book called The Goal, which is by Eliyahu Goldratt, all about the theory of constraints, and then another book which a lot of people are not familiar with called The 4 Ds of Execution. Now, in the 4 Ds of execution, he talks about this idea of prioritizing activities and tasks. And so we started using this concept called the Eisenhower matrix, which is just a simple way of graphing an activity's importance and urgency. So on one axis, you map out the importance of the activity. On the other axis, you map out the urgency. What's the timeline here? And from that structure, what you get are activities that are in the top right quadrant, which is quadrant 1. That would be an activity that is both very important and very urgent. That's quadrant 1, and that is what we called WIGs. WIGs stands for, I'm sorry, not WIGs, it's MIG. MIGs stands for most important goal. It's the most important thing because it is simultaneously important and urgent, has a deadline. Very, very, very important, right? Now, to the left of that is an activity which, if we're graphing on the y-axis for importance and the x-axis for urgency, then in quadrant 2, just to the left of quadrant 1, would be activities that are very important but not terribly urgent. So these might be your quarterly or your annual goals, things that are very important. They would move the needle very substantially, but they don't have a tight deadline, that don't need to get done today or even this week. And so we called those WIGs. They're wildly important goals. They live just to the left of MIGs. MIGs being the most important, WIGs being wildly important. Now, everything below those are things that are not important, but they might have high urgency or low urgency. We're not going to talk about those. All I want to focus on are the activities that are important, regardless of if they're urgent or not. And what we would do is every week, we'd bring the team together to discuss what are your individual WIGs and MIGs. See, MIGs, because they're important and because they're urgent, they tend to get done. Like, we need to get those done because there is a deadline associated with them. So every person in every department, they would come up to the board on the whiteboard and they would write it out for everybody to see. What is your MIG this week? What is the most important thing that if you got done this week would move the needle the most in the shortest period of time? Write that on the board. The second thing that they would write is what's your WIG? Now, a WIG is very important, but because it's not urgent, it's really easy to delay it. It's like in the first quarter of the semester or the first week of the semester, you're not really thinking about the midterm or the big end of quarter project, right? It's important. 80% of your grade is going to be dependent on it, but it's not wildly it's not urgent in the moment. You still have an entire semester to waste, right? Now, in the second week before the end of the semester, now it's suddenly very urgent. Now it's the only thing that you're thinking about, right? We don't want to put off our WIGs until they become MIGs, because every WIG on a long enough time frame will graduate to become a MIG. And then we're in the process of constantly putting out fires. We want to avoid that. We want to give WIGs the time and the attention that they need so that we can achieve them well before the deadline actually arrives. And so we need to make time in our schedule each week for working on our WIGs. Step 1 of that was actually getting people to declare, what is your WIG for this week? So for instance, if that's for me, one of my WIGs might be, I'm working on a book. So if I don't sit down this week and write 10,000 words, then in 6 months from now, this book isn't going to be done. The deadline's going to loom, and suddenly I'm going to be stressed and working like mad to try and get it out the door, right? Now the quality of the product is going to be less, and some things are going to suffer as a result, my quality, my balance of life. So instead, in this quarter, this week right now, I'm going to write up on the board, hey, my WIG to write 10,000 words. I put that on the board right next to everybody else's WIGs and their MIGs, and then the next week we come together. And in that week, we ask, we reflect, how did you perform on your MIG? Did you get it done? No? Okay, what happened? What stood in the way? What do we need to do differently? Is that still the MIG for this week? Okay, cool. What is your WIG? Did you get your 10,000 words written? No. Why not? Well, this other thing got in the way. I was lazy. I didn't feel like doing it. I slept in too late. Okay, what do we need to do to make sure that you get it done this week? Is it an accountability thing? Is it that we have to carve out time? Is it that we have to notify everybody that during this time period, you're only working on this and that they are not to bother you? Like, what needs to happen so that these WIGs and these MIGs are actually getting moved forward? And by creating this culture where everybody's thinking not just about how to put out the fires in the day-to-day of their job, because there's going to be all the fires and stuff that they have to do, but thinking one level above and realizing, okay, what is the true needle mover here? How am I carving out time in my day and my week to actually to work on those things? By making this a team process in a weekly meeting on the Monday morning, the very first thing that we did, it elevated it in everybody's minds and it kept it at the forefront. So that when they come back to the next week and we sit down and we review this, if they haven't made progress on it, they're going to be embarrassed. There's public accountability. Nobody wants to be the person who's not making progress on their WIGs and their MIGs each week. Now, I do not recommend you just do this once a week and then leave it until the next week to review. What you actually want to do is you want to be checking in with your direct reports throughout the week, making sure that they're making time and space, that they haven't forgotten. Because again, the fires that come up throughout the day, they are real fires and they're really distracting. And it's very easy for somebody just to go, oh crap, I have to go do this other thing. And they completely forget their WIGs and their MIGs. But by being the leader, you're helping to shine the light on the most important thing, which is this thing over here that we'd said when we were outside of battle, when we had the time and the collective poise to be able to look at this and objectively answer what is the most important thing. This is what we said was the most important thing, but your actions are not aligning with that today. Now you're just putting out these other fires. So which is it? Which is truly the most important? Was it the thing over here that we put on the board, or is it these fires? And usually when you give people that space and distance, they go, oh yeah, you're right. I did just kind of get sucked into the weeds. I got sucked into putting out fires. You're right. So what do we need to do to get you out of that fire to focus on the most important thing? Do your WIGs, do your MIGs, teach your team how to think through this framework. I promise you, you will start to grow and it will be amazing. That's going to do it for me, guys. I'll see you in the next episode.